On the session. Thank you. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today for the Supporting HDRs in their Internships workshop. My name is Susan Schlinker and I'm one of the HDR partnership officers within the Graduate Research Education and Development team managing the HDR internship program at QUT. Before we get started, I would also really love to introduce you to our special guest today, Professor Marianella Chamorro-Koch, who will be presenting about her academic mentor experience on a HDR internship that happened earlier this year, which happened to be one of the most amazing internships that I've ever seen. So we're really thrilled to have Marianella here to share her perspective. And I'm also joined by Ivy Chen, who is the Admin Support Officer from the Graduate Research Education and Development team. Ivy is a superstar, but if you have any tech challenges today, feel free to reach out to her in a private chat. So just to let you know about this session before we get going, it will be recorded and we will be able to send it out to you as well afterwards. And I know we're all Zoom pros now after the last year and a half, but if you have any questions throughout the session, feel free to pop them into the chat. We'll be having a Q&A session at the end of the workshop, and so I can come back to all of the questions then and answer all the questions at that point in time. And then before we move on, I'd also really like to warmly acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara as the First Nations owners of the lands where QUT now stands. We pay respects to their elders, laws, customs, and creation spirits, recognizing that these lands have always been places of teaching, research, and learning. And QUT acknowledges the important role that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play within the QUT community. And also, I'd personally like to extend my respects. If you are zooming in from anywhere other than Brisbane, Meanjin, I would like to extend my respects to the traditional owners of the lands that you're zooming in from today. So, if you've not heard of GRED, the Graduate Research Education and Development team, just a very brief introduction to our team, where we offer training and development programs that support HDR students. And we really have two main objectives, which is to help HDRs complete their thesis, and this is done primarily with our language and learning educator team, and then also to equip HDRs for life after their degree. So that sits more with myself in HDR industry engagement, and then also we have a GRED careers educator as well. So that's what the GRED team does, and then HDR industry engagement is the teal color, the green color of the pie chart there. And so HDR internships is one of the ways that we encourage HDR industry engagement. We also have design sprints, networking events, immersion placements, but our main focus of our program is certainly HDR internships, and that's what we'll be talking about today. And today we will cover, I'm briefly going to go through what a HDR internship is and why HDR should undertake an internship. And then we'll turn our attention to the role of academic mentor and benefits of being an academic mentor. And then we've got a fabulous case study with Marianella being here. And I'll also be talking about the RTP funding changes that happened last year, because that's really been an important part of the development of the internship program and what that means, the implications of those funding changes for QUT. And then we'll have a Q&A session at the end, but you're very welcome to pop your questions into the chat as we go through. So let's start with what a HDR internship is, and it's a short-term and clearly defined project that's with or for industry. So the project agreement templates we have in GRED, and the project agreements do need to be approved by GRED to be considered part of the HDR internship program. Students are covered by QUT insurance, etc. So the project itself is between the HDR student, the academic mentor, and the industry partner. So it's separate from the HDR's thesis research, but ideal if it does relate to their research in some way. But that can be quite a broad definition of related to their research, and it can be interpreted as just general development of HDR skill set. So with internship projects, the industry partner, they own the internship project IP. and it can be a standalone project, or it could be part of a larger research collaboration. So for instance, in the Faculty of Engineering, I'm working with a couple of academic staff there who have ongoing research with Transport and Main Roads and Brisbane City Council. And the students are plugging in, the HDRs, their internship projects are plugging into different portions of that research collaboration. So that's one way that it can be managed. So the internships, they can be 3 to 6 months in length. And if the collaboration is longer than that and it needs a HDR to be on the project for a longer period of time, what we can certainly do is plug students into different 6-month components of the project with a couple of week handover, so that there's a seamless transition between the students. And internally, we work with the Graduate Research Centre. So when a student undertakes a HDR internship, the student's candidature is paused. We prefer them to be able to undertake it full time so that they can dedicate themselves to the internship project. And then once their internship is complete, the candidature resumes, but the Graduate Research Centre, they move the students' milestones back by the duration of the internship. So for example, if it's a 3-month internship, their milestones are moved back by 3 months. Students that undertake an internship during candidature are enrolled in IFN 004, which is a HDR internship shell unit. And that means that the student's enrollment remains active. So there's a lot of universities around Australia that don't have this sort of setup, and students need to take a leave of absence, and then it gets messy, you know, especially for international students that need to have be actively enrolled for visa requirements, etc. So this way, it keeps them actively enrolled while they're undertaking an internship during candidature. And their scholarship is paused, but the industry partner provides funding. So the bare minimum is $10,000 for a 3-month internship. So the student would receive $9,000 of that funding, and QUT provides that to the student as a fortnightly stipend so that they can continue to cover their living expenses throughout the internship project. And then the remaining $1,000 of that $10,000 is provided to the academic mentor into their research account at the completion of the internship in recognition of their support of the project. And then you can see the table on the right-hand side, which is talking about the eligibility requirements for HDR students. So what you'll notice in common between all 4 degrees is that students need to complete a 6-month full-time equivalent study before they're eligible to undertake an internship. And then for IF 49 students, they also need to successfully complete stage 2. For ED11 students, their work in progress stock. And then for IF 80 and KK 59 students, they also need to successfully complete their research project proposal. So in terms of internship types, there's a couple of ways that students can source internships. Obviously, we prefer internships to come through the QUT HDR internship model, but and that's broken down into 2 different parts, actually. So there can be an external, what we call an external internship, where we invoice the industry partner, or it could be an internal internship, which is like what I was mentioning before with the Faculty of Engineering. The research funding QUT had already received, and so QUT became the host of the internship. Faculty of Engineering became the host of the internship, and we just organised an internal journal transfer for the funding for the internship. So we can do external or internal internships through the QUT HDR internship model. We also work with APR Intern, who is a third-party provider of HDR internship opportunities. And so you might see our emails that we send out weekly to supervisors to let them know of what internship opportunities are currently open for application. And you'll often see some APR internship opportunities there. And occasionally we have other programs. So for example, the Nicholas Baudin program, which is engineering internships in France. And so you'll see those as we work with those individual organizations, you'll see them advertised in the HDR internships newsletter. And down the bottom, you can see internships that can be included in industry-funded or co-funded PhD agreements as well. So if a student is already undertaking a funded or co-funded PhD and they're already undertaking some work with industry, then there is opportunity that they could also apply for an internship and do something separate from that industry partner that they're already working with. So that's an opportunity as well. I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview as well of what other academic mentors are saying about the QUT HDR internship program. And I've got a few quotes on the screen here. The first is that it's an opportunity to support your HDR students on a whole other level, assisting them with securing a post-HDR role through relevant industry experience. This allows them to grow immensely by applying their burgeoning expertise in the field. And it's immensely satisfying as you can literally change the life direction of a student and making their dreams and life ambitions come true. And I have to say, it's the thing that I really enjoy most about managing the program is seeing students come in and thinking that perhaps their options in life are quite narrow, and then having the internship experience, they feel that they can see how widely applicable their research skill set is across different industries and across different disciplines. And that's actually a really beautiful moment when you see that happen at the end of internships. There's a few other quotes on the slide. So the next one is the QUT HDR internship is a fantastic opportunity for students to have a taste of industry work and understand real world problems. It's a good way to give students industry experience, and it's a manageable time commitment as an academic mentor. So that's great. I'll leave the other couple of quotes there so that we can move on, but we'll be sending the slides out to you after the workshop as well, so you can check them out a little bit later. And then the question is, why a HDR internship? And there's really two main reasons that we recommend that students undertake an internship during their HDR degree. So the first one is university industry collaboration, which is now a key policy focus for universities and governments. And we really saw this come through with the RTP funding changes that I'll talk about a little bit later on. But also the second reason is that more than 60% of PhD graduates will go on to have careers in industry. We've got a couple of quotes on the slide from the 2016 ACOLA report. And I know you're probably sitting there thinking, Susan, 2016, that's so long ago. But this report is still really the top. And we haven't had another report really surpass it since then. But in that report, it said the HDR training must not be seen as an academic apprenticeship, but as the highest level of university education, the outcomes of which can be applied across a range of different careers. And so that's what we're really trying to do through the internship program, is equip students to see that they're highly valuable research skill set can be widely applicable, as I mentioned, across different industries and even across disciplines. Before we go on, I wanted to also give you a student perspective of what a HDR internship is. And we've got a beautiful video here from PhD candidate Sarah Dillon as she discusses the value of her HDR internship.
I'm Sarah Dillon, and my PhD research looks at international entrepreneurs and their emotions, and how the ways that they manage their emotions affects their decision making. And this is important because we know a lot of small businesses fail, and if we can help entrepreneurs make better decisions, we can help fewer businesses fail. So the internship was with QUT's Centre for the Digital Economy, and the project was sort of commercial consultancy type project for a government agency. And we were tasked with trying to understand how different stakeholders in Queensland dealt with and engaged with the digital economy. We had to speak to not-for-profits, community groups, volunteer-based organizations, businesses, big ones, small ones, manufacturing, services, and really gain an understanding of how they were engaging with the digital economy and what they needed from the digital economy. There were 3 main reports. One of them sort of addressed some of the questions that we had been asked to look at directly, and I suppose was a lot more strategic. Another report looked at just some of the general feedback and concerns and trends that we could see emerging in the space based on our analysis of what other digital economies around the world were doing. And then there was another piece that looked at, more broadly, how do communities, how do people, how does society engage with government and with government guidance and regulations and the different tools that we have to help people. Part of what we really were tasked with was running these workshops that were co-designed with the government partner. In that way, part of our role really was to help the partner gain that taste themselves directly from these different stakeholder groups, so that our reports weren't just PDFs. We'd really helped the partner understand what was going on as a whole. I think professionally, I've definitely got a better understanding of where my PhD and the skills that I've acquired during the PhD, where that fits in the bigger picture of industry. But also more broadly, how research can inform business, how research can inform society, how research can really make a difference and, move some of the levers and make change in the ways that, we often want to see. Here I was, on the one hand, you're in sell yourself mode, when you do an interview. And then on the other hand, you're like, well, now I've got to do what I've just, said I can do. And matching up your behaviors and what you're delivering with what you've said you can, it can be a little bit intimidating. But then when you can do that, it feels incredible. Like, you really realize that what the PhD gives you, it's not just the piece of paper, it's so much more. And I think in that way, personally, it's helped me become the professional I wanted to become and the human I wanted to become by doing the PhD. And I don't think I would have seen that quite as tangibly if I hadn't done the internship. Having been through the whole internship process, I can wholeheartedly recommend other PhD students give this a go. Initially, I wasn't sure about doing an internship because I come to my PhD with a number of years of industry experience already. It sort of unlocked understanding that allowed me to make more of my PhD somehow. I would definitely recommend PhD students get in there and, have a look and make an internship for yourself happen. I'm Sarah.
I really love that video from Sarah, and she was so honest in sharing her experience, and also she raised a really great point about having come into her PhD with a number of years of industry experience already. And I think the internship was another opportunity to see where her research skills had developed and how she can then take them into the real world, whereas she didn't have that previously, having not come into the PhD. And it's definitely something that I hear from industry partners. I was just at a panel discussion with industry partners at the Centre of Data Science the other day, and they said the main question that they have for PhD graduates is, how can you prove that you can do this in the real world? And I think that that's really the value that Sarah touched on in that video, is it's a way that she could do that, and that helped her to make more of her PhD. We've also got, I just wanted to draw your attention, we've also got some really great testimonials from some of our academic partners on our external website. I think Ivy's going to put the link into the chat now. That's the link there. And of course, we'll send this out to you afterwards as well, so you can have a look at some of those other industry partner testimonials online. But now I wanted to move into the role of academic mentor and introduce that and talk about the different components of the HDR internship and where academic mentors might be stepping in to provide assistance. And I think it starts with providing assistance to HDRs to source internship opportunities and be able to connect them with your network of industry partners to help them be able to find those opportunities. And then when we do have an industry partner, they complete an expression of interest form with us as the first step. And once I have that, I then reach out to academic staff who have relevant expertise to that specific project. And it's really because, you know, while we're facilitating the project, we obviously don't have all of the expertise that all of you do, and we really do need academic support to be able to have a look at that internship proposal and see if it's going to be feasible and reasonable for the HDR to complete within the time frame. And then when we're finalizing the internship agreement, we ask the academic mentor to read through and approve the proposed internship project activities that the industry partner has outlined. And we recommend that you meet with the student before the HDR internship commences. And this is particularly true if, so I guess, HDR internship, you could be a mentor for your own HDR student, or you could be mentoring another student who you're not supervising. And often we see HDRs prefer to connect with an academic mentor who's not their supervisor, purely because it gives them another networking opportunity within the internship program to connect with another academic staff member and have some new and unique perspectives. So that's especially if you've not met them and you're not supervising them already, we'd highly recommend meeting with them before it starts. And then student support as required throughout the internship. Now, I realize that that's really broad, but sometimes we have students that, you know, perhaps they're not used to the language that they might need to use for an industry partner, and they're still using highly technical academic jargon terms that perhaps the industry partner is not understanding. And you could, you know, step in and say, actually, you might need to just tailor your communication for the internship. So just that support as required. And students complete pre-internship requirements before they undertake an internship. And as part of that, we connect them with a reflective journal, which we encourage them to complete every week. And you as academic mentor receive those reflections weekly. And that's just a really great opportunity for you to see what's happening on internship, assess if there's anything that you might need to step in and provide support with. And we generally find the reflections are very useful for the student for the next point, which is the mid and the final internship presentations. So as I mentioned before, the internships take place in IFN 004, which is a unit, and the mid and the final internship presentations are the pieces of assessment for that unit. And we do ask that academic mentors come along and attend those. And then once the internship is finished, we ask that you complete the academic mentor post-internship survey, because we're always looking to make the program better than what it is. So the GRED internship process, this is just a very brief overview of what we call the internship pipeline, where we might undertake business development and identify an industry partner. We vet them. Then we source an academic mentor, as I mentioned, so that you can help to work with the industry partner on the project EOI, and also to promote the internship to any HDRs that might be relevant to the opportunity. We then do the, once students apply, we do the eligibility checks. The industry partner then shortlists and interviews the students. We go through the agreement negotiation stage. The student completes the pre-internship requirements that take about an hour before they commence. We finalize the agreement both with the Graduate Research Centre and in place, so that the student is covered by QUT insurance. The student commences their internship. They do the mid and final internship presentations as part of the internship. And then once the internship is completed, we finalize it and send out those evaluations. So as I mentioned, providing HDR support as required, it's quite broad. And based on the feedback and some of the instances that we've had in the HDR internship program previously, these are my top selection, let's say, for how I think you could provide HDR support as required as an academic mentor. So managing HDR expectations about the role. Some students in the past have, perhaps gone in and thought, oh, I'm coming in as CEO, and so they might just need a little bit of help in managing their expectations. As I gave the example before, assisting with communication and collaboration, providing project guidance with your expertise, and ensuring that industry partners maintain the parameters of the internship. So this is a really great example that sometimes the industry partner might ask something additional of the HDR intern. And the rule of thumb is if it's not in the internship agreement, the student shouldn't do it. But sometimes they feel like they should because the industry partner has asked them. So as academic mentor, it's just to keep them on track to make sure that the industry partner is sticking to the agreed project. Helping HDRs build confidence and ensuring that the HDRs aren't damaging the QUT brand. I have to say that we've had excellent HDRs come through the internship program so far, but it's always something that we need to be mindful of when we're working with external partners. And so here are some examples of how other academic mentors have provided that support as required to their HDR interns by continuing to clarify expectations around technical readiness of interns, continuing to refine expectations of industry partners of what an intern will be able to do, and keeping a clear distinction between will and normal employment, which is a really good point as well. The internship is a learning experience rather than paid employment, so very different. The next one is helping the student understand how long it may take to develop a bespoke internship. The one I organised took almost 6 months with constant follow-up from both the internships team and the QUT academic. And that can happen with different organisations depending on their funding situation, the levels of approval that they need to go through. And sometimes the student can understandably become a bit impatient with the process. So helping them understand that. And then the student did not comprehend that working outside the contract stipulated times means he's not covered by insurance. So he did not quite understand the IP element of the project and would love to continue giving time and ideas to partners outside of the contract. I help the student be aware of these elements and act accordingly, which is very true. We have the dates of the internship project and the student is only covered by the insurance for those specified dates. And so as much as they might become very attached to the project, they really can't continue to provide work on the project after the internship period has ended, unless we've gone through a formal process to extend the end date of the internship. So that's a little bit of an overview of the academic mentor role. And now I am delighted to introduce Professor Marianela Chamorro, who is here to discuss her academic mentor experience. And Marianela, I'm going to stop sharing my slides and feel free to share yours.
Yes, thank you, Susan, and hello, everyone. So just give me a moment so I can share my slides here. There we are. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Yes, my name is Marianela Chamorro. I'm from the School of Design, and my background is industrial design. So I'm really happy to share my experience of the HDR internship with you. There's many of the elements that Susan just mentioned happen as well. I experienced them as part of the activity that we did in the HDR internship, but it was a very rich experience for me as well as for the student, right? So this is what I'm presenting to you today. The industry internship project was it was about developing an innovative mechanism for an existing CPR mannequin. The intern HDR student was Mr. Tom Long, also an industrial designer, a PhD student. And in this case, he was not my PhD student. I'll explain in a moment a bit more on that. And they are the names of the supervisors. just to give a little bit of context to this project, the development of an interactive CPR mannequin was part of my research that started with the clinical skill development services of Metro North hospital services, and it just started with a conversation where we say, well, mannequins cost a bomb. Are there any alternative? And so that started as a teaching project first in 2020 with second year industrial design students with whom we developed 11 different kinds or types of interactive mannequins to teach children the technique. So the mannequins were small, were child size, and they had an interactive component that we explored. From that project in 2021, and as part of a program with the Clinical Excellence Queensland, we worked on a female CPR mannequin, starting from the premise that women are less likely to be resuscitated. One, because for the presence of, at the breast, and second, because even if you have trained, the compressions or provided compressions are not, it's a little bit different, difficult in terms of having the correct depth for that. So out of that, we had the interest of Harrow Group, a company that delivered CPR training for the community and for the healthcare professionals, nurses. The focus of what they needed was a head-neck mechanism, which is something that they identified that CPR mannequins would benefit to have because it would enhance the technique. They wanted it to be local manufactured, and the purpose was for community training. So there was an alignment between the work that I did before with the purpose of the CPR accessory that they were thinking on developing. So we took, instead of taking the commercial research pathway, we took the HDR industry internship. So for this project, what we did first was working with the Office of Research Services, having a conversation with the partners, and then identifying the potential pathways of having a foundational work for it to, develop something that can later give us the elements that we need to continue it as a commercial research project. So this is the brief and the elements of the internship contract expressed very briefly. So it was about developing a scoping study to investigate a head-neck mechanism for the training simulation of clearing a person's airways and plugging in other of the off-the-shelf commercially available accessories. And the second aspect of that is to make sure that it's viable for local manufacturing, which meant cost-effective. So to develop that, usually you require a team of different people and full-time resources for iterative prototyping. So we scoped it in a way, and we were very transparent with the company how we would work on it with a student. And this is why I work with a student who was not one that I was supervising. I sourced a student who is in industrial design, who I know had at least the background knowledge to work in terms of the manufacturing aspect of this project. And to do that, of course, I consulted with his supervisors first to see if, what they think. And they saw that it would be a good opportunity for this student to build his confidence. Once I had their approval, then I spoke to the student. So Tom Long came along, and we developed these stages of the project, from scoping, a literature review, to do a benchmarking study of the project, all the way to co-designing with the clients and delivering a prototype, proof of concept of the ideas that we were developing. I was very careful in scoping the project in a way that it delivered enough foundation for the client, but also in a way that is a learning process for the HDR student, that is not underselling our students' skills for manufacturing or industry, at a very low price. We are always very careful of that in industrial design. And also considering that it was a learning process. We were piloting a way to go from nothing to a benchmark that could support potential future manufacturing. So we started in February and the floods came, so we have a little bit of delay there. We followed the steps as that we agree on for the HDR agreement, with the particular focus on the head-neck mechanism. We went from the scoping interview to product and mechanism investigation to co-discovery sessions with the clients, to the midway presentation and the manufacturing and prototyping. We make sure, because of the nature of the project, that throughout the process we work with the clients, ensuring that we're capturing their ideas, understanding their needs, understanding what scenarios they were thinking of in terms not just of the result project prototype, but also of how this might work in the regulation, the regulatory scheme of delivering training with this kind of CPR mannequins. And so we went through 4 key phases, from systematic review and benchmarking research to developing semi-structured interviews and co-discovery workshop, which we did, and then elaborated a thematic coding analysis to really clarify exactly the elements that were important, that mattered to the project, and then consulted back with them to reconfirm that these were the priorities for them. We went then with that, we applied that into low fidelity prototypes for design and testing. And then we worked on the final finished design brief, which was the element that they would take to the manufacturers in order to start, industrial prototyping for the future commercial endeavor. So in a visual manner, we capture here the key activities and the different outputs. From the literature review that we coded, we went on to developing storyboards about the different ways in which this new head mechanism would be a game changer in the different situations for training of delivering CPR mannequin. We benchmarked the price range, therefore we could then position the type of manufacturing and the cost of the solution, how this might work with existing mannequins. We work on co-designing with the clients, and we develop with them over 2 days 16 different types of solutions. And then we did research through design, which is basically selecting from those 16 different models. We look onto working this on 2 or 3 selected designs that proved to be the most aligned with the brief and the needs, and work on them. I think at this point it's important to mention that for this to happen, because it was a very tight timeline with very key set deliverables that we committed to do as part of our program. We had a Monday and a Friday meeting with our students. On Friday, we would decide what we were going to do for the week. On Friday, we look at the progress. For the student, that was a very, the learning process of being effective, using effectively his time took a while, to get there. And so we managed that as part of the time that we thought it would take in terms of learning the process of starting something and finishing it and really delivering what we agreed to deliver, without adding more or without doing less. Yes, exactly. And that was a process that we wanted to pilot first, to see how it works with the students, to see how these different types of activities and the prototyping involved, and the resources required, and the work with the clients and the meeting with them, how this might be, how this all might come together. This is only some pictures of the final concept designs of the different mechanisms that were developed and tested. And maybe as a point of reflection is that throughout the internship, one of the important things, and that's something that Susan mentioned, throughout her slides, is the management of expectations with the client and with the students. From the start, working on the scope of the brief or the project with the client, that was important, and iteratively discussing with them that this is exactly the points that we're working on, and with the student as well. And you can see that in a creative process, there are many opportunities that present themselves as you go and develop new ideas to expand, these different models or outputs that we committed to deliver. And it was very important and a little bit challenging to manage those expectations as a learning experience for the student and as a way to manage, the time with our clients. The other aspect of that is co-creation. Co-creation is, in this case, is very important. It's something that I've done before anytime I had a project with the students and industry, making sure that there's an agreement so that we can continue elaborate on that and there's no setback. In that way, also the clients feel that ownership, that is their idea, and therefore at the end of the process, they're committed to it. The third thing, it was the most important, it was to model the process. This project was a process of doing research and doing applied research. The student brought a lot of his skills from his industrial design background, but he also was able to test some of the methodologies that he wanted to employ in his PhD, and he was very explicit about that learning process that it would actually allow him to test and pilot the number of interviews, the research through design process, the co-design type of workshop with prototyping, which in the literature is covered, but in real life, having to do that and to deliver in short time is it's quite challenging for a person who is just doing it for the first time. So we model the process of doing the work, but also of working with the client. And then, of course, we always focus on the deliverables that we committed to. By the end of the internship, we were able to deliver the brief as we agreed on and pilot and approach, the one that I explained to you. We co-authored an industry report, and at the moment, after a post-meeting with the Office of Research Services, our client needed an endorsement from a top organization for them to confirm that the change that they wanted to do would fit into the regulations of CPR training. So the project at the moment is post, at that stage. And that's it from me, Susan.
Thank you so much, Marianela. I hope everyone really found a lot of value from Marianela's presentation. It was definitely one of the most outstanding internship projects that I had ever seen thus far. And Tom, so Marianela's student on the internship, he did say to me as well, I felt like it was such a condensed dry run of my PhD, and he found so much value from, as he said, how he explicitly said, that he wanted to implement different methodologies, and he said that he found that so useful because he was only 6 months into his internship, and it was incredible outcome. So thank you so much, and I'll invite you to stick around for the Q&A session at the end. Thank you. And so the benefits of participating in the as an academic mentor in the HDR internship program, as I mentioned, it's $1,000 into your research account at the completion of the internship. And also you can have the full internship project income recorded as external income on your RAD. And you're also able to provide evidence for research or leadership and engagement activity within the academic career framework. Of course, it's a way to develop and enhance your industry collaborations and also to increase your funding competitiveness by contributing to your ARC linkage track record. Now, one thing I wanted to touch on before the end of the session is the RTP funding changes that happened in 2021. And so now there are additional weightings where universities will receive additional funding for not just PhD completions, but also PhD completions where they have what's called an eligible industry internship undertaken as part of the degree. So what makes it eligible? There's three main criteria that you can see on the screen. The first one is that the HDR internship must be a minimum of 3 months long or 60 full-time business days. The second one is that the internship must be relevant to the student's research topic. And as I mentioned before, this can be really broadly defined and can encompass general PhD skill development while on internship. And the third one is probably the most challenging criteria, that the HDR internship agreement must be, the HDR internship must be agreed upon in written form with the research end user within 18 months of a full-time PhD student's course commencement, or 36 months for a part-time commencement. And so the way that we can do this is either in Tom's instance, where he was within the first 18 months of his PhD when he undertook the internship, we could finalize the agreement, and then he undertook the internship, and of course that one counts for the additional RTP funding. But another way that we can organize it is with something called an intention of internship, which is just a very brief template that the industry partner would complete to say that they intend on providing an internship to this student. We have that form completed within the first 18 months, but perhaps the student goes on to undertake the internship later in their degree, say in the second or third year. So that's something to bear in mind, and let me know if you would like a copy of that intention of internship template, and I'm really happy to email it to you. So we're heading into the end of the session. I want to make sure that I give you time for Q&As. So I'll just quickly give you an overview of how HDRs can apply for advertised internships that are on our HiQ site. That's here. We also provide resources to HDRs on how to apply. We've got a PDF guide and a video guide called Nailing Your HDR Internship Application that are available on HiQ for students to consult as well. And we recommend that they do, because the HDR internships are really competitive. And we also run workshops for HDR internships as well. So the last two that we have coming up for the year are on the 6th and the 7th of December. Feel free to share these with your HDR students on HDR internships, and also self-sourcing a HDR internship. And I have to say, I think that's the best workshop that we run. We take the students through how to identify prospective industry partners, and then how to undertake an informational interview with them to give the industry partner an opportunity to get to know the student before they then pitch the internship with them. We also have the industry engagement form that we really recommend that students complete online. Sometimes we have internships come through from industry partners and it's a really tight turnaround and we don't have time to promote the opportunity. So when students have registered for the program, we're able to go back through those registrations and see if we can find a good match of skill set. So where to from here? We've got more info on being an academic mentor, which is available at this link here. And I think Ivy's going to put that in the chat for you. And then also you could start a conversation with the students that you're supervising to see what their thoughts are on internships, if they're interested in undertaking one. And then we also have the HDR internship newsletters that come out every Tuesday. So you would have seen these fabulously bright orange newsletters in your inbox, which has got the opportunities that are available. But you could also start discussing the HDR internship program with your industry connections and see if it's something that they're interested in. And I'm always really happy, to come along to a Zoom chat with you, and I can talk more about the program with your industry partners as well. So how you can best support is obviously connecting GRED with potential industry partners and also with students, working with us to provide those intentions of internships so that we can have or meet that eligibility criteria for eligible industry internships. We can also have sometimes students' employment also counts as eligible for that additional RTP funding. So let us know if you have a student who's working in an industry that's relevant to their PhD, and that also might be applicable as well. And then we'd love if you're available to mentor internships and also to share internship opportunities with other academics and HDR students to promote the program. Before we move into the Q&A session, we've just got a very quick 1-minute anonymous survey I'd love for you to complete on how we can make this particular workshop even better than it already is. And while you're working on that survey, I'll also now open the Q&A session. If you have any questions, please feel free to turn your camera and mic on. And I'm just having a quick look through the chat to see if any questions came through there. No, nothing in the chat. So if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to pop them into the chat now. Kim.
Hi, Susan. Thanks very much for that presentation. That was really interesting. I just wanted to, understand a little bit more about the early stages of developing an internship project. My PhD is very keen to do an internship, and he's asked for my suggestions and ideas. And he's kind of started to, sort of follow some leads and thinking about what it could potentially look like. So I'm just wanting to understand, like, how does that proceed? If from that point, and who kind of writes the agreement around the internship, ensuring that the student, that it's acceptable for the student and appropriate, and, how does that all kind of come together from that early stage?
Yep, such a great question. So what we normally do is have a project EOI that we send to the industry partner, and we ask them to complete. And then at that point in time, we then either reach out to an academic mentor if we don't have one on board already. In this case, obviously, we'd reach out to you just to provide your feedback around the project that they've, the project proposal that they've submitted in that EOI, because sometimes it can be too broad and it needs to be focused a little bit. And sometimes I think they just don't understand how long different elements might take of an internship. So we ask for your help on that project proposal. And then academic mentors are definitely involved in the agreement stage as well. So we draft the agreement based on the information that we provide, that we've received from the industry partner, but we ask the academic mentor again to have a look through the proposed activities, just to make sure we don't want to put any student into an uncomfortable position where they've just taken on a project that is way beyond scope or their capability. And so we'll ask the mentors to look at the agreement draft before we issue it to the industry partner. So essentially the mentors get the final rubber stamp before it's sent out, because we're relying on your expertise to say what's reasonable and feasible within that time frame.
Okay, so GRED should really be involved quite early on in the process when we get things started. And just in terms of identifying suitable partners, so we're in the Faculty of Health, so we kind of don't necessarily have those commercial type partners in terms of options. So, our health services, suitable partners, other universities, suitable partners, like what kind of people should we be sort of exploring options with?
Health services, definitely. And again, once you reach out to us and say, hey, I might have an internship in the works with this particular partner, we go through our own internal vetting process as well. But health services, yes, definitely. Other universities, they won't be eligible for that RTP funding though. So it depends. Sometimes with our program and with that additional RTP funding, we're definitely not scaling the program back to only internships that meet that eligibility criteria. It's a great program, and we want all students at all stages of candidature to be able to benefit from it. But I think just bear in mind, if you've got a student within the first 18 months, it's probably better to not have them on another university internship project, just so that we could potentially meet that additional funding criteria.
Okay, right, that's good to know. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Did anyone else have any other questions, or any questions for Marianella while we've got such a valuable first-hand experience of academic mentorship?
Maybe what I can add, Susan, to Kim's question is that, yes, we worked before in HDR internships with healthcare services and universities as well in particular projects. And so we did PP for pediatric care. We've done something that is called the WeWe project. It's about collecting urine samples and educating people. We work on projects that are related to the cultural awareness training for healthcare workers through videography. We had a project that I led, had to do with Mount Isa hospital services, about the people, people with diabetic foot disease and the making of orthotics that takes such a long time. And the result of that provided the foundations for a $2 million CRCP project that we're working with Orthotics Healthcare and Mount Isa. And so there are plenty of opportunities. And in terms of developing that brief, once I identified that there's a interest from the industry, the sector, the health services, whoever it is, and there's a connection, then establish an interview, a conversation, just to see if there's a opportunity for a scope for example, the HDR internship, and we go from there. So the first thing to do is just have those conversations, because sometimes the expectations are too large and really not fitting for this.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, well, we've hit 2 o'clock, so that's the end of the workshop now. But if you think of any other questions, I'm just going to put our email address into the chat for you. I'm always very guilty of, I attend workshops and conferences, and then the next day I think, oh, I should have asked that. So if you have that happen tomorrow, feel free to email me at hdr.intern@qt.edu.au. I'll be happy to help you out. And tomorrow we'll be sending you all out the recording and then also the slides from the workshop as well. But thank you all so much for attending, and thank you, Marianella, for presenting. It was fabulous to hear and share your experience, and I look forward to working with you all in the future. Have a great rest of your afternoon.